All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon, and in this video, we're going to talk about Terence Crawford and a deal that is close to being done or was close to being done with the PBC. Now rumors come out that there's a big hurdle in it, and it is directly related, according to reports, Bud Crawford's ego and wanting a type of contract similar to that made Floyd Mayweather Jr. so wealthy. Let's talk about that in this video. All right, welcome back to the channel. It's your boy Fanon. We're talking about the welterweight division and what is going on with Terence Crawford, where he's going to go next. There's been reports that had come out last weekend that Terence Crawford was close to signing a deal with the PBC. We've been talking about this for a while. HAYMON and the PBC wanted to sign him. Floyd Mayweather Jr. wanted to sign him, and looks like it's getting close to that deal getting done. However, according to some more updates, it looks like that may be in trouble for several reasons, but let me get into that in 1 second. First, let me welcome you back to the channel if you are a subscriber. If you're not a subscriber, I would ask you to accept my invitation to subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can be notified of when we release more videos, and your support is greatly appreciated on the channel. All right, so let's get into this. Hopefully my dog, which is in the other room, my niece's dog, which is in the other end of the room, will not continue to bark like it yapped just a second ago. But okay, so report came out off of a group in Facebook out of Belgium. I do believe the group was from, it's a website that's operated out of Belgium. Released a report this weekend that said that Terence Crawford was close to signing a multi-fight deal with the PBC with $30 million guarantee, right? For 2 fights. One would be a Danny Garcia fight or a Keith Thurman fight, and the other one would be the Errol Spence Jr. fight. Now, more reports have come out where people were saying very slickly that, look, if this stuff does not take place, this Errol Spence Jr. fight with Terence Crawford does not take place, you better understand that it is not Terence Crawford, it is not Errol Spence Jr. that is responsible for that fight not taking place. And the reason why people are giving it, the people that I've talked to are saying that, is because Terence Crawford is the same notion that he was going to sign a $30 million guarantee is the reason why is the main problem in the situation, because he's asking for multiple fights with guaranteed money. That is the type of contract that Showtime had signed with Floyd Mayweather Jr. when Floyd Mayweather Jr. had moved from HBO over to Showtime. That's not, however, what the type of contracts that the PBC have been giving out and working with other fighters since then. A guaranteed contract, and just so that you guys understand what that means you have a certain number of fights and you're guaranteed a certain amount of money for a certain amount of fights. And that has not been the model that they've been they've been operating under. They have had in their contracts, my understanding is that they have guaranteed that they have minimums that they have in relatively low minimums, and those minimums have not been over $1 million. So take, for example, Gervonta Tank Davis, and you see Errol Spence Jr. as well. When Errol Spence Jr. and Gervonta Davis, when their purses are shown, their purses are around $1 million guaranteed. That's their purse. The rest of the money comes from their gates and comes from their, things that come on the back end. At least that's the understanding that people have. Now, their contracts are not readily available, right? And we do not necessarily know all the different streams of revenue that they get, but they have been consistently putting them on pay-per-view. So you know that they're going to get a percentage of the pay-per-view buys. You know that they're going to get a percentage of the gate. And that's how the big name fighters that have been on on Showtime and have been fighting on the PBC pay-per-view cards. That's how they've been making their money. They've not been making their money the way that Terence Crawford was making his money when he was fighting on Top Rank, where he is getting a significantly bigger guarantee, right? If you go back and you remember a couple years ago when Bomac, who was the manager, or Brian McIntyre, who was the manager of Terence Crawford, was saying that, Errol Spence Jr. was living paycheck to paycheck. They didn't like his deal, where now we know, because of the lawsuit that's taken place between Terence Crawford and Bob Arum, that they had guarantees for the fights, and his guarantee was, for one, he was paid a $3.5 million guarantee. I think the last couple were like $4.5 million guarantees. And so it appears that what Bud wants to do with the PBC is he wants to have those really big guarantees and not necessarily be focused on, a percentage of how much is coming out of the gate and how much is coming from the pay-per-view, right? And that right there, the problem that causes from an operational standpoint is that it significantly increases the upfront cost of the fight, and pretty much taps heavily into whatever budget a network would assign for that particular fight. So it just makes it makes the fight more risky on the outset than it would be if you had the type of deals where where they take their risk is on the back end, and they're saying, look, for more money on the back end, you can take less risk on the front end. And I'm sure you can understand why that would be, where Errol Spence Jr. says, okay, give me a $1.5 million guarantee. That'll be the least amount of money that I make on the fight, which is, that's not a little amount of money. Or Gervonta Davis says, hey, give me $1 million, for a guarantee, but I'm going to get X amount of the gate. I'm going to get X amount of of what revenue we actually realize, right? So it pretty much, the scenario that they're operating under is the model that Leonard Ellerbe talked about, where they said, look, we're not into losing money. So when they mean they're not losing money, that means they're going to set that fight up in a way where they won't lose money, where the better the fight does, the more the fighter is rewarded. If the fight doesn't do well, and if it flops for some reason, then the fighter's pay is going to reflect that. However, the promotional company, the networks and all that, provided they reach, some smaller level of a break-even point, they make their money. They feel like they didn't feel like they lost their shirt, and then you're able to continue on and do more fights. So it seems, my understanding is that Terence Crawford has taken the risk-averse stance that he had when he re-signed with Top Rank for the more guaranteed money, and trying to negotiate that into a contract with the PBC when they're not operating underneath that model. But we'll see what happens. I'm very hopeful that the deal can get done. I certainly hope the deal can get done, but it's more than likely not going to be a case where like, say, for example, if you hear the original number that was reported, which was like $30 million, where Keith Thurman is going to get a guaranteed $1 million for the fight, and Terence Crawford is going to get a guaranteed $15 million. And then the second fight, Errol Spence gets a guaranteed 1.5 and a cut of the pay-per-view and all that, but Terence Crawford gets a guaranteed $20 million. That is probably not going to happen. It's going to be a problem that could hold up the fight because of that Mayweather style of deal that he's looking for. Now, Mayweather could do it because he had both. The networks were willing to pay a lot of money out of there. I think over 6 fights or 7 fights, they gave him $200 million. So they're like, yeah, we're willing to invest that much money in you because we really do believe the pay-per-views will be that successful. And he got a cut of the back end down the road, but it's just not the situation that Terence Crawford is in. Anyway, that's my take on the situation. You let me know what you think in the comment section. And with that, I'm out.